How's it going, everybody? There has been an apparent Avengers 4 plot leak that has been going around the internet. I've gotten many requests from some of you to go over it and give my thoughts on it, so here we are. So, a few things. One, the Infinity War Blu-ray giveaway still continues. All you have to do to enter is Hulk smash that subscribe button, like this video, and comment below with your thoughts on the video and your favorite superhero. 2, always take these alleged plot leaks with a grain of salt. But 3, this has come from an alleged source that has been pretty reliable in the past. They were actually right about the majority of the events of Avengers Infinity War. So, you never know. Regardless, I'm going to go over it for you guys. So this theory talks about a few things that actually make a lot of sense and line up with what we know already. One of them, of course, being time travel. Another one is the arrival of Professor Hulk and him wielding the Infinity Gauntlet. This lines up with a previous plot leak. So time travel and Professor Hulk wielding the Infinity Gauntlet already line up with the previous supposed plot leaks. And then in this theory, we're going to get a completely different look on Tony Stark and Thanos. Okay, so let's dive into it. Again, take this plot leak with a grain of salt, but here it is for your pleasure. Okay, so according to this plot leak, Avengers 4 will start off with Ant-Man traveling back in time to events before Iron Man 1. He of course gets there through a time vortex in the quantum realm that was mentioned in the post-credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp by Janet Van Dyne. When he gets to this part in time, he ends up finding Hank Pym, and they end up working on a sling ring. It would make sense that one of the first people that Scott looks for is Dr. Hank Pym. As far as the sling ring goes, perhaps they are trying to do this so they can figure out a way to access the quantum realm. Now obviously the sling ring is Doctor Strange's thing as the master of the mystic arts, and you would definitely call it magic. But in the first Thor movie, Thor explains that where he's from, magic and science are one and the same. So it's not a too far-fetched idea.
Because you're right. Yeah, look. Your ancestors called it magic, and you call it science. Well, I come from a place where they're one and the same thing.
But here's where it gets kind of interesting. Eternity shows up. So Eternity is a cosmic entity and is the actual embodiment of the multiverse. And Eternity can manipulate the multiverse to do essentially whatever he wants to do. Eternity has no physical body but can warp space and matter into a manifestation that can be perceived by humans and all other species. So Eternity shows up and, for his own selfish reasons, ends up helping them. He gives them special gauntlets that allow them to control their movement in time. And then this is apparently where the title sequence comes into play. So music starts, Avengers title comes on, let's call it Endgame, and we go to the next scene. So after the title sequence, we cut to Titan, where we see Iron Man and Nebula starting to make their way back to Earth to regroup with the remaining Avengers. This makes sense because obviously after the snap, Tony is going to want to see who is still alive. And what else is Nebula really going to do? She wants to undo Thanos' snap, so it makes sense that she would go with Tony. Plus, she doesn't have any family or friends left besides Rocket, but she doesn't know that he's alive right now. So they go and they regroup with the other Avengers, but then apparently Thor goes to Hell. He goes to Hell to build an army of fallen Vikings, much like Hela did in Thor Ragnarok. Speaking of Hela, she's there as well, along with Heimdall. This isn't a too far-fetched idea because, again, in Thor Ragnarok, we saw Hela do this. It would make sense that Thor could possibly do this as well. Now, Asgard is destroyed, and so is the Eternal Flame, but again, he's going to Hell. So perhaps there's a different way to get this Viking army he's talking about. So cutting back to all of the other Avengers regrouped together, Ant-Man pops out of a time vortex. He then proceeds to tell all of them what is going on and gives them the sling ring. Apparently within the first hour of all of this happening, Thanos finds out about the sling ring. Once he finds out, he sends his army, the Chitauri and the Outriders, against the Avengers. And in return, Thor sends his army of fallen Vikings against Thanos' army.
Bring me Thanos!
So here's where more time travel comes into play, because apparently in this battle, future Thor and future Captain America are in it. And during the battle, they both end up dying. Thanos then sends his army against the Avengers in the sling ring. I'm not too sure what that means, but that's what it says. So this falls a little bit into an old plot leak about Avengers 4 that says Thor and Captain America will fight together and Captain America will end up lifting Thor's hammer before he dies. It doesn't say that in this plot leak, but again, it did in a past one, so I'm just connecting the dots here. So now Ant-Man is with the Avengers, so they know how to time travel now. So the Avengers start to travel across time to collect the stones and stop Thanos. This falls in line with some of the other plot leaks that we've heard so far. The Avengers figuring out time travel, going back in time, collecting the Infinity Stones for themselves so they can forge their own Infinity Gauntlet, undo Thanos' snap, and prevent it from ever happening. And this just kind of makes sense because right now, at the end of Avengers Infinity War, Thanos has all of the Infinity Stones, and it seems like he's definitely on a distant planet somewhere. So they really have no way of getting the Infinity Stones. So really, one of the only options they are left with is to travel back in time and collect Infinity Stones from the past. So that makes sense to me. So they go back in time to right after where Red Skull is transported by the Tesseract, and they grab Captain America from the past as a replacement for the future Cap, who is now dead. So they continue to travel back through time, visiting past events. They go back to the Battle of New York, the events of Age of Ultron, Guardians of the Galaxy, and before Thor, The Dark World. It doesn't say how, but it does say Captain Marvel tags along on their time-traveling adventures, but she doesn't really do much until the last hour of the movie. So this kind of makes sense. We've all seen the leaked photos of the Avengers back at the Battle of New York, Captain America wearing his old uniform, and Tony looks like he is actually from the future. And if Captain Marvel is everything that people have been saying she's going to be, Kevin Feige says that she's going to be the most powerful superhero in the MCU, it would make sense that they save her for the end because she's probably too OP, would probably make the movie a little too easy for the Avengers. So then it said that they go back further in time to before Thor, and Hawkeye grabs Odin's gauntlet. Now, it's heavily debated among fans of whether or not Odin actually had a real Infinity Gauntlet, mostly due to Thor Ragnarok, where Hela is in Odin's vault and she says that the Infinity Gauntlet in there is fake as she pushes it over.
Fake. Most of the stuff in here is fake.
However, many people do agree that the one that was in there is fake, but he actually had a real one, just not stored inside the vault because it was kept in a place that was even more secretive and secure. Many people actually believe that Odin collected the Infinity Stones himself hundreds and hundreds of years ago before scattering them out again. Okay, so Doctor Strange eventually makes his way out of the Soul Stone and goes back in time in the Sling Ring. I think many people believe that Doctor Strange will be back in Avengers 4 and actually play a pretty big role in the movie. So this makes sense. So Thanos finds out about the Avengers attempting to go back in time and collect their own Infinity Stones and forge their own Infinity Gauntlet, and when he figures this out, he again sends his army to them. Now, here's where this supposed plot leak gets a little crazy. Apparently in this battle, half of the Avengers from the past and half of the Avengers from the future die. The Hulk ends up wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, but then gets his arm cut off. He later then gets a mechanical one. So this actually lines up with a previous plot leak as well, where Professor Hulk is coming into play in Avengers 4, and he wields the Infinity Gauntlet, but he gets his arm cut off. This previous plot leak is backed by the fact that the first official image for Avengers 4 that came out shows Professor Hulk. Well, it shows what people believe to be Professor Hulk. So this does line up with that. Here is where the plot just takes a crazy turn. Eventually, Thanos is killed, and the gauntlet, along with the Infinity Stones, are destroyed. Thanos dying in Avengers 4 isn't much of a shock, but what happens after is, after Thanos is dead and the stones in the gauntlet are destroyed, Tony absorbs the power of the Infinity Stones. And then, Eternity reveals himself to be a future version of Tony who has ascended his mortal body. It turns out that Eternity has been manipulating events throughout time, and the only people who truly had free will are Doctor Strange, Hulk, Red Skull, and Thanos. As it turns out, Eternity needed Doctor Strange to get rid of Dormammu. He reveals to Tony that he will become a conqueror and rule over the universe, and that the people will remember him as Kang the Conqueror. That's right, this plot leak says that Kang the Conqueror is going to be in Avengers 4. And not only that, they're saying that Kang the Conqueror, Eternity, and Tony Stark are the same person. The last 20 minutes of the movie is a 20-minute battle of everyone versus Kang. They can't beat him. So eventually Doctor Strange goes back in time and kills Tony before he becomes Kang/Eternity.
I'm going to allow that.
In the end, the Avengers are happy that there is no longer a war or any possible threats. And the last thing this plot leak says is that in the post-credit scene, it shows Ultron waking up. Okay, so that is the entire plot leak as it has been reported. Now I'll give you my opinion on it.
Where we see, and please allow me to finish this because it's going to seem like a bit of a jump, we see Thanos, who was the villain teased at the end of the first Avengers movie, realizes that there is... Tony Stark realizes
this is someone
that there is
I know
Tony
who that
Stark...
is. I know who that is.
I think that there were a lot of things in this plot leak that lined up with previous plot leaks and theories that many people have that are true and we will see in Avengers 4. And here's the thing about Kang the Conqueror. His story is so complicated. So Kang is actually from the 30th century and from an alternate timeline. This timeline was created from people going back in time and altering the events of the past. So according to this plot leak and other plot leaks that we've heard, that definitely happens. The Avengers go back in time, changing events to try and collect the Infinity Stones. Now, Kang the Conqueror's real name is actually Nathaniel Richards, and in the comics we see Nathaniel and Tony Stark at the same time, so we know they're not the same person. However, the writers and the producers and directors can do whatever they want in the MCU, so it doesn't mean it can't happen. Again, Nathaniel is from the 30th century, and he was pretty much a genius, much like Tony is a genius. And Nathaniel comes across a time travel device, much like Tony will come across time travel in Avengers 4. So there are a few connections here. Time travel was actually well discovered in the 30th century, it was just illegal. Kang came across a time travel device and essentially just broke the law and went back in time to Egypt and dubbed himself a pharaoh. Now Kang would go on to jump across different alternate timelines and eventually in one of those timelines would conquer the world, thus spawning the villain Kang the Conqueror. This is something I could see happening to Tony Stark. He discovers time travel and his genius mind wants to do all these different things and go explore different timelines. I'm not saying I believe it will happen, but it could. The point being, they could connect it somehow in the MCU, although I don't believe they'll do this. It just seems way too complicated. And one thing I don't believe is that they will go back in time and kill Tony Stark and leave it there and be done with it. Not gonna happen. And I also can't believe that they would have Kang the Conqueror / Tony Stark turn into Eternity. Obviously, the logic of this plot leak is that Tony discovers time travel, goes on to become Kang the Conqueror, absorbs all the power of the Infinity Stones, turning him into Eternity. Again, it could happen, but it's just too messy and I don't see it ending that way. So again, there are many things in this plot leak that I do believe are true, that do line up, and I think we'll see in Avengers 4. However, I cannot believe the ending. So that's what I think about this plot leak. Many of you asked me to do a video on it and share my opinion, so there it is. I'm sure everyone has just tons of thoughts and ideas and comments, so please make sure you tell me in the comments below. I know this supposed plot leak is pretty crazy, so I'm looking forward to hearing what y'all have to say. And again, the Infinity War Blu-ray giveaway continues. If you would like to enter, all you have to do is be a subscriber, like this video, and comment below with your thoughts and your favorite superhero. Thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.
The chair. Tony Stark realizes that there has been a disturbance in what he will call a time ribbon. For the time being, I will allow...